Chapter 6: Inspired Flight. Colin forced his way through a group of women clustered at a safe distance from the burning house. He could feel the heat of the red-orange flames shooting up between puffs of dull gray smoke. Men hauled furniture out of the ground floor. Others formed a bucket brigade led by Humphrey Monmouth, who had taken off his fine cloak and rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt. On the roofs of neighboring houses, children clambered through dormer windows and dabbed at sparks with wet claws. Colin stood on tiptoe, trying to catch a glimpse of the attic room where Tyndale worked. It occurred to him that Tyndale might have gone on some errand of mercy, as he often did in the afternoon. Relieved at the thought, Colin searched the faces of the crowd. Which one of these people would have told church authorities about Tyndale's whereabouts? Could it be the carpenter with his horny hands and leather apron split and fastened about the knees? Or was it the tailor, a man of spare form, sallow face, and quick eye? Or perhaps it was Humphrey Monmouth's closest neighbor, a merchant in long gown and sober cut square cap and golden chain. One man stood out above all, tall and clothed from head to foot in a thick brown robe. He moved quickly from one person to another, holding out trinkets. Colin watched a woman glance at the tall man's hand, cross herself, and draw a coin from the purse at her waist. "It's a hair from the head of a dead saint," the tall man said, bending toward the woman. His robe gaped open, and Colin saw a checkered doublet of green, red, and white. No real churchman would wear clothes like that, Colin told himself. He edged closer and listened to the tall man's whine. "This will protect you and your family from the curse of fire," the robed man said to a woman. She bought a relic. Soon he had sold a dozen. A cheer broke out from the bucket brigade. Only a wisp of smoke drifted upward. Colin sniffed the smell of wet, burned wood and damp whitewash. Humphrey Monmouth, his face blackened, his fine white shirt torn and muddy, peered into the house. His wife and children came up and stood with him, silent and downcast. A bystander shouted and pointed upward. Someone was unlatching the dormer window. "Look, there's a man up there," someone said. William Tyndale, his hand still on the latch, looked out on the crowd below. "I thought I smelled smoke. Is there a fire somewhere?" There was a gasp of astonishment from the crowd. "Didn't you know the house was on fire?" Tyndale looked puzzled. "No, I was busy with my book." For a moment the crowd was silent. Then a roar of laughter burst forth. People pounded each other on the back, repeating, "He was busy, too busy to notice the house was on fire." "Who is that man?" Colin heard the tall man in brown robes ask. "That's William Tyndale," one of the bucket brigade answered. "He's a preacher. He prayed over my sick daughter last week, and now she is up and well. He's going to bring the scriptures to us in our own language." At these words, the tall man jerked to attention and questioned one after another about William Tyndale. Everyone praised Tyndale. A woman ran up to the tall man, waving the saint relic she had bought. "You cheat, you! This is not the hair of a saint. If it isn't a hair of a horse's tail, may I burn for you. May I burn for it." Others examined their relics and began to mutter. Without another word, the brown-robed man darted through the crowd and disappeared. Colin was convinced now that the man must be a spy. Why would he have asked so many questions? It was plain, too, that the man was a scamp, Perhaps even now he was telling the church authorities about Tyndale's influence on the people. Now that the danger and excitement of the fire had died, the crowd drifted away. Some marveled at Tyndale's escape from suffocation. Others agreed. Colin could hear the name Tyndale on many lips. He followed Humphrey Monmouth and his family into the back room of the house. Monmouth examined a pile of charred cloth. Did someone deliver a bale of goods today? Colin could tell from Mrs. Monmouth's startled face that something of the kind had happened. Her pale blue eyes widened. Yes, two strange men came. One said they were from the wharf, said you would understand what the cloth was for. I didn't give it a second thought. The other man didn't say anything. He was young, with a fiery red beard and dark red hair. Very odd. Colin's heart lurched. Only one man in London looked like that. John Teeson. Was he taking out a personal vengeance on William Tyndale, his former teacher? Or was this part of his work for Cardinal Wolsey, the dread High Chancellor of England? Humphrey Monmouth fingered the charred cloth. Whoever the man was, he spoke with a double tongue. I understand very well what he means. Monmouth had a faraway look. We must act quickly, this very night. In the cleaning up that followed, Colin had no chance to ask what Humphrey Monmouth meant. Colin went to bed hours later, tired to the bone. It seemed to him that he had barely touched the pillow when he was awakened by William Tyndale. Get up and dress, Tyndale whispered, then come downstairs. Wide awake in an instant, Colin obeyed. Monmouth and Tyndale were waiting for him on the first floor. Without a word, they ushered him outside and started down the dark streets at almost a run. Colin did not dare ask the two men where they were going. At the wharf, piled high with bundles, crates, and bales, Humphrey Monmouth led the way into a warehouse. Several bulky figures moved toward them. Colin shivered. His hair prickled along his neck. He fought a panicky impulse to run. He didn't know where or why. He felt as if spies were crouched in every pocket of darkness along the wharf. There you are, a man said in a low, relieved tone. All the rest of us are here. We were beginning to wonder if it was already too late. Someone lit a candle. By its flickering light, Colin saw 6 or 7 merchants in fur-lined cloaks. Tyndale went quickly to one, a man half a head taller than he, with a long, slender face. The two clasped hands. Yes, Sir William, I notified your brother, Humphrey Monmouth said. John has pledged his help. I knew he would, Tyndale said, smiling. Only I'm not sure just what help is needed. Colin started with surprise and impatience. Couldn't Tyndale understand that his life was in danger? Did he not think the fire was just an accident? Then Colin realized he had not had a chance to tell Tyndale how Paul's friends had overheard the plot. Humphrey Monmouth sat on the counter and motioned to the others to sit on bales of goods. There is no doubt in my mind that Sir William is being persecuted by the church. Tyndale's brother, John, jumped up. With Sir William's brilliant reputation at Oxford and Cambridge, I don't think the church would dare take any drastic step. Annoy him? Yes. Even threaten him? But I don't think it will go farther than that. You don't? Humphrey Monmouth was polite but firm. 2 years ago, as you know, Cardinal Wolsey ordered all Lutheran literature to be turned in, but Luther's books haven't stopped coming. The Cardinal is doubling, tripling his spy system. Monmouth told the others about the fire. If Sir William prints an English Bible, sooner or later he will pay for it with his life. There was a meaningful silence. An almost uncontrollable trembling seized Colin. He watched the flickering shadows cast by the candle, what lay in the dark corners behind the merchants. Perhaps Church Spy was listening and identifying every person at the meeting. Colin tried not to think of the red-bearded John Teeson. "Do you feel you must go on with this translation?" Tyndale's brother asked in a respectful voice. "Yes," William Tyndale said. "Christ commanded his disciples to publish his last will and testament. He did not say to hand it out in Latin. He said to give it to all people. What Luther did for the German people, with God's help, I shall do for the English. I shall never alter one syllable of the Scriptures against my conscience." The candle sputtered, casting shadows on the white, strained faces of the merchants. Humphrey Monmouth put his arm around Sir William's shoulders. "Your work will light a candle which will never be put out, and I pledge my help." "I too," the others echoed one by one. "Then first let us advance the money that will allow Sir William to translate the Bible without worrying about his daily bread," Humphrey Monmouth proposed. Everyone agreed. Tyndale bowed his thanks. "I am now beginning to see the pattern of things to come," he said. "Spied on, never free. My translation will offend the Church, but I pray that the King of England will see the light." Tyndale's voice deepened and his jaw muscles tightened. "There was not room for me in my Lord of London's palace, and I see now there is no place for me in all England." Again a silence filled the room. Colin stared at the candle flame. It seemed to him that Tyndale himself had become the tiny flame that was the only light in a world of shadows, fear, and treachery. Colin resolved to stay with Tyndale, no matter what happened. At once he felt a curious light-heartedness and gladness. He looked boldly at the dark corners of the warehouse room and made a new discovery. There was nothing frightening about mere shadows. "Yes, Sir William," Humphrey Monmouth was saying, "you must go to the Continent. What is forbidden is one part can be done safely in another." William Tyndale smiled. "But they burn books abroad, and fire is not a theological argument." Humphrey Monmouth did not laugh at Tyndale's jokes. "Go to Germany. The art of printing is advanced there. You'll be working in a language few understand, and there will be less chance of spies finding you." John Tyndale broke in. "As soon as you have it printed, you can smuggle it here. A few books in a bale of cloth, a few more in a barrel of flour." "Yes," a merchant agreed, chuckling. "William Tyndale, merchant of Bibles, or rather, Bible smuggler. You didn't learn that at Oxford, did you?" The talk became light banter for a moment. Colin drowsed, wondering why he had been brought to the meeting. Humphrey Monmouth rapped for attention. "Sir William, you must leave tomorrow morning for the Continent." This news startled Colin into excited wakefulness. A buoyant expectation bubbled up within him, and he itched for the trip to begin. "One more thing, Sir William," Monmouth said. "It will be better for you to use another name." Tyndale agreed. "I'll use a family name. Hutchins," he said. If I took a strange name, I might forget it. Humphrey Monmouth opened the warehouse door and looked outside. It will soon be dawn, and there must be no sign of a meeting here. Now, Sir William, let me give you a final warning. Keep your work secret. Don't let people find out how much you know. Of course, you can't disguise your Oxford accent. But don't be lured into discussions of the church and its problems. You sometimes get carried away, you know. Tyndale nodded in all meekness. You'll need more suitable clothes than your scholar's robes, Monmouth went on. Here, exchange with me. John Tyndale took off his fur-lined cloak and exchanged it for his brother's long robe. Now you can be a prosperous merchant looking for markets on the continent. The next morning at the dock, Tyndale appeared to be a merchant to Colin's way of thinking. They lined up with other passengers ready to board the little sailing vessel. In spite of his lack of sleep, Colin looked and listened with interest while the crew made ready to cast off. When the passengers were all aboard, the captain called, "Haul the bowline, veer the sheets." The prompt answer drifted over the breeze, "It shall be done." Sails bellied out before the wind. The forecastle pointed toward unknown land. Colin looked back at the wharf, trying to keep his feet steady on the deck. Tyndale, with strangely white face, clung to the rail with both hands and gazed as if he could not get his fill. "Oh, sir, isn't it exciting to sail like this?" Colin pounded the rail with his excitement. "Just think, this is my first trip on water." Tyndale still looked at the land. "It's my first trip, too, and my last," he added in an undertone. For a long time Colin watched the water, feeling the wind push and tip the boat. A little later the wind stirred up waves and whistled so sharply in Colin's ears that he turned to find shelter. As he did, a tall man in green and white checkered doublet, slightly stooped shoulder, came toward them. At once all of Colin's excitement turned into dismay. The man was the one who had sold relics the day before at the fire, the one who had asked so many questions about Tyndale. With a sinking sensation in his stomach, Colin realized he had forgotten to tell William Tyndale about the spying relic seller. How could he have forgotten such important news? The man came closer, his long arms curved like barrel staves. Colin stared. Was the man trying to keep his balance, or did he have a more sinister purpose? "This ship is a perilous horse to ride," the stranger said to Tyndale. The ship tilted. The stranger's outstretched arms closed round William Tyndale. It would take only a shove of the stranger's powerful hand, and Tyndale would be knocked overboard. In the split second of realization, Colin saw one thing he could do. If it failed, all three would go overboard. Colin crouched, a choked prayer on his lips.